The great mouthpiece craftsman Ralph Morgan wrote an article years ago called "A Meyer is a Meyer is a Meyer." And he, in this article, discusses just how many variants there are to Meyer mouthpieces, how many different eras, how many different vintages, and how the name is almost meaningless when it comes to what you're referring to, which era are you referring to. And that's very true with Meyers, New York Meyer Bros, New York USA Meyers. It's also very true for Chedevelles. There's so very, 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 very many different variants of Chedevelles, stencils, eras, and even if you're talking about handcrafted by Henri Chedeville himself or Charles Chedeville himself, still so much variation. What I have here is a brief glimpse. I have 3 Qualite Superieure stencil Chedevelles. This first one is a Robert Mallarnay, and it is an early Qualite Superieure. It's early because the Qualite Superieure is below the ligature lines. The original facing is pretty rough. Generally, these are pretty rough facings, and they absolutely need to be seen by a mouthpiece genius to make them work. But sometimes they're worth it. So this is a good one. This is probably one of the best original facing Qualite Superieure Lalande period Chedevelles I've played. So yeah, pretty rough. But there's a nice shimmer, there's a nice ring to the sound. There's a nice focus. There's a nice level of projection. This is the same period. And this one says LeBlanc. And this probably came off an early 1950s LeBlanc, maybe even 1960s LeBlanc Clarinet. But it says Qualite Superieure on the side, which it means it is a Chedeville blank, a good Chedeville blank, or at least it can be a good Chedeville blank if it has good internals. So this one does. Brad Bain faced this one, about 1.03 tip opening, and it really plays great. I love about Brad Bain's work, this is a Blue Box 3.5. Let me show you a V12 3.5, and it also plays really great on this mouthpiece. And that's part of it. Is sometimes you can find an original Qualite Superieure that almost works, but it's very reed picky. So, yeah, that's right up there with some of the best mouthpieces I've ever played. And it's not an artistic facing Chedeville. It's not a hand made, signed Henri Chedeville or Charles Chedeville, or some of the earliest stencils that don't have any indicators like those by Eugene Berceau, or Robert, Leroy, Bettany. Sometimes have the CC stamp on some of those, or Lalande, early Lalandes. When we say Lalande period, that can get confusing because he made mouthpieces before he owned the Chedeville company. So this one is a late Qualite Superieure. The Qualite Superieure begins above the ligature lines, and it's okay. It also has been refaced by someone, not Brad Bain. It's nowhere near as good. It doesn't have the focus that the other two mouthpieces have. even that first one with its original facing, in ways is actually better. Let me go back to the V12 reed, and that might play a little bit better on this one. But yeah, it's kind of, you're playing the lottery when you find a Qualite Superiore because, well, first of all, is it early or is it late? That'll tell you a lot. What are the internals like? What is the baffle like? What is the exit board like? I will say on that second one that Brad did that I really love, it has a very large exit bore, and that contributes a bit to its sound. Sometimes they're too big, sometimes they're way too small, sometimes the throat shapes are wild. And the facings are always a little bit weird. And I think part of the reason why the facings on these are weird are not only are there so many different makers, so many different stencils, but also, during this period, Leylandais came out with their own reeds. And their reeds were pretty fantastic, but they were very easy, very light. And so the facings almost needed to have more hold to control them. And they're the polar opposite of like a lot of the Van Doorn reeds that a lot of people use today. So here's that later Qualite Superiore with a V12. So it's okay. I think if Brad did it, it would play a lot better. But there's a hollowness to it, and this is where you have to be careful when you find a Qualite Superiore. Yes, it is a Chedeville, but what does that mean? That can mean a million different things. What do the internals look like? How good is the rubber? What is the baffle like? It's a cornucopia of possibilities. The really good ones can be world beaters sometimes. I would say it's not as rare as finding a really good buffet Chedeville, but sometimes it feels like that.